So it's an honor to be here. I've never been to the College of DuPage, and I went to thank Professor Keith Chrisman and Dr. Nahid Hassan for inviting me to be part of this symposium. This morning, I am going to talk about the historical landscape of Burmese women and the current situations of them. This is part of my book, which was published last year, called Burmese Women in Modern Burma, or the Women in Modern Burma. So this is part of the first two chapters. So if you want to read more about Burmese women, so there is a book. So this is the outline. I will first give you the commonly held views of Burmese women and who are the champions or the architects of the global image of Burmese women as liberated ones. And I will give you some specific examples from these three groups: queens, women soldiers, and the women writers. And towards the end, I will talk a little bit about the contemporary profile of Burmese women. The official and popular narrative concerning the status of Burmese women in the 20th century has been that they are granted an equal status as men. National framework of history writing has also been to defend this privileged position Burmese women have enjoyed over many generations. Burmese women have been mostly portrayed as powerful agencies who not only enjoy high status in the society, but are also granted equal rights as men. And they are often compared to Chinese women who had to bind their feet to make them look beautiful, and Indian widows who had to practice sati at the funeral of their husbands. So they stood in contrast to Burmese women who, it was generally said, enjoyed immense freedom. So these oft-cited examples helped scholars, the mainstream media, and the masses maintain an enduring image of liberated Burmese women. To justify their view, they search for social and economic factors that might have brought about this unique, sometimes almost exotic, freedom to Burmese women. And they found women traders and shopkeepers. Travelogues consistently mentioned that Burmese women were free and powerful to manage shops by themselves and often control household purse strings. Another popular woman and examples of high status enjoyed by these women include women writers, and the fact that women are able to inherit their husbands' properties when they died. So we could generally say that measured by common equality indicators, Burmese or Myanmar women won by 100 miles. And here are a few more examples of powerful Burmese women. So the first one, Pwa So, is the daughter of a peasant farmer. And the legend has it that a king cobra blocked sun for her when her father was working in the field with her. And 3 types of flowers blossomed from one tree when she was born. So we associated her with this enigmatic power. She became the queen of King Narathihabate, who reigned from 1256 to 1287. Another powerful example from history is called Shinsabu. She's a queen who reigned from 1453 to 1472, and she was known as the patron of the famous Shiragon Pagoda. So some of you might have seen that from yesterday's lecture series as well. Another powerful woman is Domya Saint, who is generally considered as the most powerful and prominent lady in Burmese public life, according to the editor of her 1944 book. She was clear that Domyasin here, Burmese women occupy a place in society no greatly different from that held by their sisters in the West. The National History on the Status of Burmese Women cited the example of Domyasin as one of the earliest achievements of modern Burmese women. After these two women, the Pwaso and Queen Shinsopu. I will show you a few pictures of how we remember these women. So here is the picture of Queen Shinsopu. And you see men paying their respect, not just men, also the elephants as well, right? So here is a picture of Domyasin when she visited England to negotiate for Burma when Burmese politicians campaigned for Burma to be separated from India. And this is another woman, a writer, and a quite famous writer. Some of you probably know her. She is the author of many books in English, including Burmese Family, World of Burmese Women. I like this picture. This is a woman editor working at her desk. And of course, the modern day powerful woman Aung San Suu Kyi, the picture on the left was taken actually when she was under house arrest. She was asked to go and see the then senior Deng Shui and the prime minister. And then the picture at the bottom was taken only very recently when she was asked to see the President Thein Sein. To go back. And women writers are represented by these two women. So I talk about Domi Mikai, and the second one is Kim Yo-chit. I will talk a little more about her later. And then, so these two women control the literary landscape of women writers. But what is behind this romantic picture of powerful Burmese woman? So I will give you a few examples that could challenge the popular narratives that they enjoy high status and are granted equal rights as men. So the first one, how about the women traders? So in Buddhist countries, trading is considered too mundane for men who must aspire to attain nirvana. Men should leave the day-to-day dealings of this material world to women, and women therefore were left with the market trading jobs. Like today's teaching jobs in Burma, which are increasingly being feminized, trading in the past, in the late 19th and earlier 20th century, was mostly under the remit of women. And because of their visibility in public places, Western travelers regard Burma as kind of utopia for women. And the head woman, how about their status? So regarding the status, I would quote a historian, Richard G. Curson, and I quote here, "Succession to the post of headman was generally through the male line, although hereditary female lines were not unknown. The rarity in world government systems of lines of hereditary female administrators has led observers during the colonial era and beyond to overemphasize their significance in Burma, where in fact they were also rare." So only 9 of the 152 hereditary lineage were female lines. That is only about 5.9%. And only 7 more lines included women as joint administrators. So altogether, as the sole administrator or as joint administrators, it's only about 10.5% that involve women as headmen or in administration. The vast majority of these lines were concentrated in Bagan, the place in the picture of your program. The percentage of women among all village and city heads, not just those from hereditary lines, was actually much smaller. And how about the queens? Were they really powerful? I would argue that they are not the image of female power, but a buffer for the kings and the princes to ward off the potential rivals in the palace. So for example, Queen Shinsobu's husband, King Naradihapete, had a history of choosing powerful girls from the countryside, that is, girls from the great families. One Burmese historian argues that jealousy was rife in the palace, and by appointing So, who was the head of the Sohlawin district, as his chief queen, the king seemed to have expected his new queen to use her practice skills in governing in these palace affairs. The king also had many other wives, and by carefully selecting those from the powerful background, he could channel their wealth, power, and security to him. Another king, Naradihapete II, who is also the king of Avar, also married off his daughter to Minjinyu, another king of Taungu, hoping that he could secure loyalty and support from the latter. He also gave Minjinyu fertile lands of Chaose as a wedding gift. So from these examples, daughters are considered as a valuable asset for kings to establish diplomatic ties. Queens of the previous kings were married by the later kings to show their continued loyalty to the previous establishment, and also to secure continued support by the networks and clans of the queen had, especially if the queen was of a high descent or from a powerful and wealthy background. So how about the Queen Shinsobu? So she was actually given to the king of Avar by her own brother, Banyadama Yaza, who reigned from 1423 to 1426. But she escaped with the help of 2 Mon monks from Avar, from the middle of the country, to down south to Rangoon. Mon kings, but later ran out of male successors after the son of the king Banyadama Yaza died, and she became the first and the only queen in Burmese history. She was remembered and honored in history, not as a brave princess who secured her own escape and later became a queen, but a promoter and a patron of Buddhism and the Sritagung Pagoda. But Shinsobu, despite being able to bring peace to the Mon kingdom, she did not reign long. Instead, she handed power over to her son-in-law, the same one of the 2 monks who she escaped with and later asked to disrobe. Both Shinsobu and Pwarso, the examples that I just gave, are the examples to highlight that women were used as gifts to offer peace, but national historians often omit this fact. Shinsobu was the gift to the enemy king of Avar by her own brother, but Burmese history witnessed the exchange of daughters, sisters, or even wives for a guarantee of loyalty and security. But it is probably more convenient for national history to omit this fact. Also, modern-day practices in which military generals often exchange their daughters and sons as a guarantee of security highlight the continuity of such practices. Women as emissaries for peace and was initiated by 2 kings called Wariju, a Shan who seized the Matavan, a town in the south, and Tarapia, a Mon king of Bago. They married each other's daughters towards the end of the 13th century, a ritual followed by later kings to establish mutual loyalty and support in war. And there's another king, Dabin Shriti, idea of racial integration was through blood, and he believes that only intermarriages could convince both Mon, a major minority in Burma, and Burmans, the majority, to think each other as one and thereby establishing long-lasting peace. To be married by successive kin is considered one of the highest accolades as a queen or a princess could achieve. So these are a few examples that I highlight as a way to challenge the popular narrative about powerful queens. And I will now move into independence period, so which is early 20th century until 1948, the year when Burma gained independence. So here you see the popular images of women soldiers. So this is a modern woman soldier. This is a historical woman soldier fighting with a sword and on a horse. So this is the battalions of women soldiers marching, and another woman soldier, women pilots. And this is a group of women soldiers who fought alongside men during the World War II. So I interviewed them in 2005, 2006, and 2007. Sadly, 2 of them died. Now only 3 remain. So women were visible in the independence movement, and they were invited often to join the movement by their husbands and lovers. But what is the reason behind this invitation? One of the leaders of the independence movement, a man called Uchitma, he encourages his girlfriend, and then later became his wife, to join the movement in the belief that Burma's independence movement could reach its goal only when women were involved. That view was rare. Perhaps as a professional in an overwhelmingly male-dominated trade, he was the editor and writer, so this man understood the serious absence of women in the escalating independence struggle. But his belief that independence could be achieved only with the contribution of women did not mean that he fully trusted women's capabilities. Because in his letters to his wife, he explained that women could contribute towards independence, but only indirectly. Women could promote the cause indirectly, and he said, and I quote here, "I admit honestly and without a shame that men committed longer and strived harder only when women supported them." His confession reflected the wider society's attitudes towards women as campaigners or moral boosters, but never as fighters or forerunners. So politics is generally considered not for women, and prominent female leaders, including female writers, who are often the most influential women in Burma, did not aspire to become politicians, unlike their male counterparts. But given the situation in which women were not encouraged to be active in politics, there was a time in Burma when the country nearly saw the first women's army. More than 200 women applied to join the army when the first recruitment ad appeared in the newspapers during the Second World War. It was towards the end of the Second World War. But the women's army did not materialize. The male leaders cited the logistical reasons for the collapse of the plan for the women's army. Only 7 women were given military training and sent to the front line. So you see the picture of 5 women that I saw. A few more women joined them later. Immediately after the war, they were sent home. But women active in politics saw the army and the larger political space as hostile to them. And most of them came to understand after the war that they must leave politics altogether. This could explain why the Asian League was the last political organization in modern Burma to involve the mass participation of women. Neither the women soldiers nor the political leaders saw the army as a place where women could carve out careers and be promoted alongside men. The vision of the first women's army crumbled, partly because the army had to launch an earlier than expected attack on the Japanese, but mainly because the concept was supported only by a few top leaders, while the rank and file thought it unimportant or unnecessary. Some unofficial revolutionary members later joined the underground guerrilla movement, a step that led them to become almost social outcasts. so women writers. Another powerful yet marginalized group of women is writers. And I will give you a few examples of them. So the first woman that I want to talk about is called Dagong Kinkinley. So she is considered mother of the female literary landscape. She carved out her career as a man, adopted a male pseudonym, Gokole. Why male writers adopted female pseudonyms to pen what we can call kitchen sink literature? Female writers had to adopt male pseudonyms to be taken seriously as because women having talents are frowned upon. So this woman writer, Dagong Kinkinley, attacked Burmese men for reinforcing the cultural barriers against women. In one article in 1958, she accused Burmese men of feeling ashamed to work together with women or under the supervision of a woman. She argued that men were uncomfortable with women entering the workforce and that male employers did not want to see a woman being paid the same wage as they do. So she also challenged women to take more interest in politics. So even though women editors and writers like her would advocate for women's rights, they did not see themselves as politicians and never strive to build a political career using their pens, as their male counterparts often did. There was no patron-client relationship between monks and women editors or writers either, and women did not see their newspapers as providing a transition to the political stage. So in fact, women such as her and another woman like independent docent did not even feel completely comfortable as a woman in the world of newspapers. They often had to use male pseudonyms to relay their thoughts to the readers and be taken seriously. So these are the picture of two women that I just talked about. The left one is the Dagong Kinkinley, and the right hand is the first newspaper's editor and owner of a newspaper called Independent Newspaper. So her name is Dorsem. But so I will now move on to the contemporary Burma. So what are the views of some Burmese women leaders? So these are the quotes from the interviews with a social campaigner and woman MP, the member of parliament. So they both said that Burma is not a country where women are discriminated. They said that the cultural and also the political settings allow women to rise through ranks, not just in politics, but also in other sectors as well. But the statistics contradict what they thought of the status of Burmese women. We like to compare Burma to our neighbors and also to India and China and Bangladesh. But in terms of gender inequality, or here there is a gender inequality index. So Burma actually ranks behind all these countries. So Myanmar is ranked 149 at the very bottom. So behind all our neighbors, behind Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, and even behind the traditional examples that we like to pick with China and India. So why is there such a conflicting view by the social scientists and the Burmese by themselves about the status of women. So I would argue that there's a conflict between the judgment of facts and the judgment of values, right? And then historians and also Burmese women, especially if they hold powerful positions in the society, are compared to defend the traditional notion of Burmese women as being powerful. So I will also highlight some of the gaps between the images or traditional notions and the real status of women. So I use some of these data to construct the current profile of Burmese women, particularly in education. So here, this is the first graph. This is the percentage, the comparison between male and female who obtain university level education. So in Burma, it's only about 10 or 11% of high school graduates who could go on to the college or the university level. So here, after 1962, so 1962 is the beginning of BSPP, right, Burma Socialist Program Party. After that period, more women go to universities than men. But how about other levels? High school, this is a high school level, so we inherited the British education system, so the highest is the 10th grade or the 10th standard. So here, actually, so there are more men than women in high schools. How about middle schools from 5th to 8th grade? So the same, right? So there are more men than women. But how about primary level? So there are more women than men historically from late colonial period to 2002. So what do all these graphs show? So it shows that there is a bigger education gap in women than men, right? So there are more. There's a majority of women who are in primary education, but they stopped. And then I also found out after I interview the parents of the dropout girls, especially in the countryside. So if they were to choose between a son and a girl to take out from school, they often choose girls, right? Then you can see that why there are fewer women in middle schools and the high schools. But if a girl makes it all the way to the 10th standard, they are likely to go to the university. But sadly, for a lot of girls in the countryside, their education stopped at the 4th grade. So this is also tells you that if you see a powerful woman, she only represent a tiny percentage, right? Because the majority of them only finish 4th grade, right? So, and if they say that Burmese women have equal rights and then they enjoy equal opportunities in education, actually she is talking about probably like 5 or 6% of women, right, who could go to the university. So this is about the dropout rate. So this is only the statistics that capture girls and boys who are at schools. But actually, if you look at the dropout students, which not generally make to the official status, the number of girls who are dropout is way higher than boys. So how about the income gap? So this is a little bit old because it is from 1956. I chose a few sectors and then compare the salaries between men and women. The percentage is quite striking. The So in all these sectors, even the sectors that are generally considered women-dominated, like cigars or the cheroots factories, where almost everyone is women. So, but men are consistently paid higher than women. There's only soap factories where women are paid higher. So probably the soap factories are a place a woman should go to in Burma because they're paid higher than men. And then this is in the 1990s where Burma saw the emergence of the joint ventures. And then there was a fast wave of foreign investment coming in. So here, women make about 55% in joint ventures employment, but in the rest of the sector, it is normally around 30%. But how do we fare if we compare ourselves to our neighboring countries? So the numbers highlighted in red are quite interesting because girls who are aged 15 to 19, so these are the girls who we would normally think that should be at school, right, are not in the job sector, but actually it's about half of them are actually working. So, but when they come of age and should join the job sector, the number is not that different. It is the 59.9% is only 6% higher. So where majority of them should be working, they are not, probably because they cannot fare, right, equally as men, and probably cannot find jobs as easily as men do. So if you compare that to Singapore, so 77.9% are working, and Vietnam, 84.4% of them are working. So it is a similar data. So here, the younger cohort, 15 to 19, there are 52.6% of them in labor force, but when they get older, it is 66.2 compared to 85.4% for men. So the job market is not very favorable to women who are working age. And health and education sectors are becoming increasingly women-dominated. But sadly, senior posts are mostly occupied, like the directors and above, by men. Only less than 1% of these senior posts are obtained or occupied by women. So, and I present this finding to a group of women in Burma, and then we talk about whether there's hope for equality for women. So we found that women's difficulties and unequal access to opportunities hide them from media and also mainstream politics, and then they feel that they are ignored by the powerful women, because they always talk about that, Burmese women do not necessarily have to worry about discriminations and then income disparity and so on, because they do not see the majority of them are not like them. And also I look at the preference for boys and girls in families to see that whether there could be an increase in the perceived value of girls. So, and then the numbers are quite depressing. So I compare two groups. I analyze these data. So this is the men groups with no education, highlighted in red. And another group is men with university education. So men with no education say 69.1%, so almost 70% of them said that they prefer boys over girls. And men with university education. The number is down by only 3%. So almost 67 of them say that they prefer boys over girls. And how about decision making in young men and women? So here you can see that young men feel freer to choose their own partners, whereas only 1 in 2 women would say that they will choose their own partners. So then what do women do to survive in this seemingly unequal society, right? So by controlling their own biology, right? So this is the contraceptive rates among women, and the numbers are quite high, especially for a country with majority of women living in the countryside with not very high education, right? So, and then the birth rate in Burma is not that very high. So women, I think, are becoming to realize that by controlling their own biological mechanism and by choosing to have fewer children, they could cope better. So, and then we came up with some of the solutions to address these issues. And then we all agree that there should be a change in the perceived value of women. And when we talk about the status of women and whether or not they enjoy equal rights as men, we should use different languages and draw conclusions based on facts, not from what we think that we should say, right? But what we should say from the real situations. And also the minorities. Here, I am not talking just about the minority ethnic groups, but also the people who do not have education as high education as some of the most powerful women do, right? So these women lag behind not just their highly educated counterpart, but also men, and these women do not have their own voice. And so when powerful women, especially the women in politics, like women MPs, talk about the women's rights, they should try to give voice to the minorities that they leave behind. And also we thought that there should be a part-in with the conventions, right? That we should focus less on what we are expected to say, to continue to promote the high status women, but more on what we need to challenge to raise the status of the women, which is, I think we all will agree that lower than men. So I will end here and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Let us know women in Burma. My question is very simple. If you know, can you share that with us? In their culture, I think there's a paper a woman has to sign before they can get married. Is that correct?
Not necessarily.
It's not the marriage certificate issued by the government, but in their culture, there's a marriage paper the women has to sign so they cannot get another marriage.
Well, I don't think so. The traditional belief and the practices stay going on in a lot of places is when a man and woman move in together, and if your 7 neighbors know that you are together, you're considered man and wife, right? And then a lot of couples, especially if they are in the countryside, do not register their marriages or do not sign the paper like you mentioned. Yeah, but many couples these days now choose to register their marriages. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering how access to technology might be changing the lives of women in Myanmar. Do they have more access to cell phones and internet, and are people organizing themselves around that kind of thing?
Yeah, after, I would say, 2013, 14, and particularly in 2014, the price for mobile phones and SIM cards particularly have dropped quite significantly. So now a lot of men and also women have access to these technology. So for example, in the past, a SIM card will cost $4,500, and then you can buy actually an apartment with that amount of money. Now it is only a few dollars, right? $1 or $2. So it's a lot of companies, the tech companies are now trying to write apps and work with the existing microcredit organizations or the non-profits to see whether or not they can help women. I think Hillary Clinton is involved in one of the projects to access loans, through these mobile banking. It is happening, but not as quickly as we would like. But I think, the access to technology in the long run could help promote women, especially in the business sector, and access to market. If they have more information, they can probably bring in more income. But it also has to do with whether or not these mobile companies, particularly two big ones, the Norwegian Telenor and the Qatar, the Ooredoo companies, can really work throughout the country, right? And then not further dividing women from the frontier areas and the mainland, because right now there are some conflicts going on and they cannot implement infrastructure in these areas just yet. So there might be some divides. But to go back to your original question, I could see that access to technology could help change their lives. Yeah.